whatever time it is for you. Thanks so much for joining, everybody. Today, I've got my friend Derek Delost here to talk about his journey at DotYeti. And Derek, I'm super excited to do this because we have not talked with someone on the show who bought their business as a way to get into entrepreneurship. And that's what you did with DotYeti. And so I want to dive into that journey today. First of all, give us what is DotYeti today, and then we'll kind of work backwards in time.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited to chat. We've talked about this before, but hearing you and your journey actually on a podcast really kickstarted, was part of my journey in acquiring DotYeti. So nice to have.
So maybe you're paying it forward, right?
That's right.
This is you to the next generation. Yeah,
exactly. And nice to kind of come full circle in that way. So DotYeti, flat rate graphic design subscription. We service mid-sized businesses, is kind of our core audience and customers, but we do work with businesses big and small. We work with a number of startups. We work with a number of enterprise, billion-dollar SaaS companies we have in our portfolio. So really working with a broad range of businesses, big and small, and offering that quality, affordable graphic design.
So what was your background before getting into DotYeti? How familiar were you with entrepreneurship in general? And then how did you kind of get exposed to it?
So my background, I came up at digital marketing agencies. So I was a marketer, digital marketing, loved kind of working at agencies. Enjoyed kind of working with a bunch of different clients, helping them kind of solve their problems. Came up digital marketing and always kind of worked with the creatives as a digital marketer. Being in media, moved over to Group M and was running some bigger kind of just straight media buys. And was always working really closely with the creative teams to see how, like other creative agencies for our clients, to see how that creative actually impacts performance of marketing. And as a media buyer and kind of digital strategist, saw firsthand how important creative is in that journey. So was always really fascinated. I always really liked the kind of creative side of marketing, but was in a little bit more of the kind of numbers and kind of nuts and bolts of digital marketing. Transitioned out of that, went through my own kind of journey of agency burnout, I think, as a lot of people on the agency side do. Moved over into tech. Tech was really exciting and wanted to go in-house and went from Group M over into tech, started working in tech, worked with some great people at startups, watched them scale, worked at, pre-revenue startups and then worked at some larger startups, kind of running, marketing departments, building marketing departments, driving growth, which was great. I worked with a lot of really awesome people, but got to a point there and kind of a point in my career where I knew that it was time for me to go out on my own. I was definitely craving more autonomy. This is around, 2020 to like 2022, 2023. So the world was a little bit topsy-turvy. You're questioning your life decisions. How did I get here? What's next for me? This feels, is this it? And did a lot of work around that to kind of just feeling stuck. That was a big kind of process in itself. But I read this book. I'm a big reader, and I read this book called The Millionaire Fast Lane. And it's an awesome book. And I was it's the title kind of puts you off because you think like, oh, it's some kind of get rich quick thing, which it's not at all. The author talks about entrepreneurship and building businesses and the way of building businesses as a way to kind of like structure your life and kind of build the life that you want. It was a really, really inspiring book. And that I'd always kind of thought, I needed to go out on my own, and I'd done some freelancing stuff, but I never loved it. And I could never kind of get it past a certain level. So read that book, and then I can't remember what, like maybe stumbling across some business for sale listings locally. And you're like, hey, that coffee shop down the street is like for sale. Like you could buy it and be the owner of a coffee shop. And that kind of was like, what? That was kind of weird. Um, and then right after I read Millionaire Fastlane, read Walker Dybel's book, Buy Then Build, which is a phenomenal book. And he's a great guy from the times I've crossed paths with him. Highly recommend that book. And those two books together just kickstarted me on this path of business acquisition. And what does that look like? And I knew in my skill set, being a marketer, I and kind of like leading growth campaigns, I was better and I am better at growing things than building them from scratch. I've never been a process person. I've always been a kind of like, here's the thing, make it bigger, get us more. And I can I've been successful in my career being able to do that. So the idea of buying a business, kind of jump starting that first 3 years, was really exciting to me. So that means, obviously that's where you kind of came into it, listening to podcasts, heard you on, I can't remember the name of the podcast, but it was a great,
Probably Acquiring Minds, right?
Yeah. Great podcast as well too. I really immersed myself in that world of business acquisition and it was really exciting.
I want to kind of dive into something there that you just said, which I think this might resonate with certain people who are listening, that maybe, you work at an agency or you worked at agencies, but you've never really wanted to start your own. How did you come to recognize that I am a builder and a grower of an existing thing, but I'm not really the best, or I'm not the most comfortable in that spot where I'm going from 0 to 1, the very first start?
I mean, a little bit of just trial and error. I think
had you tried to start your own things? Like,
I'd gone out freelancing and, kind of started freelancing. And, it's funny, I had other, people in my network or colleagues that I had, and they're like, oh, I started freelancing and all of a sudden I've got like 45 clients, and they just and that was never really my experience. That was always kind of a grind. I found myself doing a ton of upfront work to like the skill that I was selling, which was as a solo kind of freelancer, the skill that I was selling was, digital marketing, whatever, advising, strategy consultant, whatever. But like 60% of what I did was, or even more than that, was like bookkeeping and, running sales and putting together proposals. And I didn't love that part of it. And so I really struggled to get traction, and I would kind of get a little bit of things going, but then kind of never knew where to go to it. And it just didn't feel right, I guess, is more, what I could say. And I know when I was at work in my job, I was always a growth and results person, not a like process person. And I had some wonderful managers, some that have different concepts in that. When they wanted process or processes built, I was like, I'm not your guy for that. So, but then on the flip side of that, jumping into a startup or jumping into an existing business, and they're saying like, we need more results, my brain and my work kind of just could dive into that. And I like to chew on those problems, problem solve, campaign plan, execute, test. That was a lot of fun for me, and then ended up having success with that. So that was a little bit of how I just kind of trial and error over the course of my career, and understanding that setting something up from scratch was a lot of the type of work I didn't love doing. And so I felt like that held me back from, you know what I mean, pushing through, because I get to certain points and be like, meh.
You have a certain level of skill, makes a certain amount of money for you, income, by getting a job, right? Going to being individual contributor somewhere or a manager or whatever, you kind of know what you can make. And starting a business is you go down to zero. And it's not just the money, it's just also the like you have no respect, like nobody cares about what you're doing, like you get nothing. You got no like nothing to stand on. And it is really hard to jump back to zero like that and then have to build it all from scratch. I think it takes again, a very unique person to want to do that, and probably not just a unique person, but also a unique time in their life where they're ready to make that kind of jump or like, step down, because it is a big humility. Like it's you have to be humble to go do that, I think. And not to say that buying a business doesn't make you humble either. I think we'll talk about that. I'm sure it does. But I think it just, it is a certain kind of person that can do that big of a leap. The other thing that I would say, in my experience with this is, finding product market fit the first time is so friggin' hard. It is. I had at least 10 side projects that I've documented that I tried to get going into businesses before starting draft.dev. And every one of those failed because it didn't have any degree of product market fit that was really worth, pursuing. And so I spent a lot of time composing these ideas and putting things together and putting landing pages up and talking to people and trying to do stuff, and like none of it really went anywhere. So the amount of time you spend just trying to find product market fit on something can be huge. And that's again where the ROI on time buying a business versus starting one from scratch is often slanted very highly in the favor of buying one.
You have product market fit. I mean, if you're buying the right business,
yeah,
you have
assuming it's making money, you've got some product market fit. Yeah,
exactly. You've gone through that, and when you're looking for product market fit, I mean, you might never find it, and it's hard to also know when to give up, or when to pivot. I've seen startups that have phenomenal products. They've built phenomenal tech products. It literally is, their value proposition is like, this will legit change the way you do things for the better. This will legitimately change your life. And then people don't really want to change the way they're doing something. And it can be, or the timing's a little bit wrong. And that's a different skill set. I think there's a lot of people out there though, we'll talk about, I'm sure, the kind of search for businesses, and I'm sure you went through the same thing, but there is, I think, a real skill set out there of people who can build this business of processes, find a bit of market fit, get it to a certain level, and then they don't know what else to do with it, and they list it for sale. I saw a ton of businesses. I would say DotYeti was in that position. I have great relationship with the founders, which we can talk about more. I think that's really important and what I looked for. But I think they kind of got to a certain level and they weren't sure what else to do. And I saw a couple founders that I talked to through this process that had kind of gotten their business to a certain level and built this kind of process, but didn't know how to scale it. And so I knew for me, that's a perfect match, right? Is like, I'm like, great, you built it. I can take it to the next level. So finding that match was really important for me and what I was looking for.
100% agree. Let's talk about the search though. So I assume you went out and, buy then build's whole sort of mantra. It's like, it kind of gives you a sort of way you can start your search. It sort of gives you a way that you can start to look at financing and papering out the financials. So what were you looking for? What were your top criteria? Did you want an agency for sure? Or was that just kind of the first thing that came across your head?
Agency was top of my list of businesses I did not want to.
First failure of Derek Delost is buying an agency. Whoops. Here we go.
I was ready to get out of marketing, and it was something I was not looking at. So going through, you come up with the kind of like purchase statement of what you were looking for, and mine was around wanting a business that had operational processes in place and great management, but needed sales and marketing to get to the next level of growth. So I didn't have a specific type of business that I was looking for. I had a different kind of set of criteria for what I wanted. And then the other part of that was there's a lot of a lot of the kind of entry points into this, and especially a lot of the kind of influencers out there right now. They talk about eternally profitable business, buy a laundromat, buy a landscaping company, buy an HVAC company. And I think that that's a great idea. And I looked at a lot of businesses like that through my process. I looked at a lot of businesses like that and kind of ended up coming full circle through that journey.
Why ignore those sort of ones that are popular? Again, HVAC, lawn care, like laundromats, those all get like talked about by the sweaty startup people. Why kind of move on from those? And I don't think they're bad either, but just curious what switched it for you.
I think through my process, I think they're great for the right uh, business acquire. And that's another thing I think is like the business that was right for me is not necessarily right for you. And the business that's right for you is not right for me. Like it's very kind of like, what's your criteria? Through my process, I mean, it took me well over a year of looking at businesses consistently, a lot of NDAs, um, looking at starting building my criteria kind of based on millionaire fast lane, based on kind of lifestyle, based on what I was looking for, and that would kind of change and evolve through my checklist. Now, I looked at like a lot of great businesses. I looked at like flooring businesses. I was really high on HVAC for a while because I was like, the world's getting a lot hotter, at least in my part of the world, and companies are going to need to get retrofitted. And the idea of this kind of like recession proof business is very appealing, right? Because you're taking this big risk and you're like, how can I de-risk this? So something I did is try to de-risk this acquisition as much as possible. So you're like, well, plumbing company is going to be less risky because like people are always going to need plumbing. There's really not going to be any innovation coming in to disrupt. So I looked at a lot of those eternally profitable businesses, tons of them. And I think what clicked for me at one point is that I was looking at an HVAC company and it looked really good. It was like, I was like, the numbers were looking good. I was like, I think I can make this work. Like, it's kind of ticked a lot of my boxes. And then I was clicking through on pictures of their office. And I thought, like, do I really want to talk about HVAC all day? Do I really want to all of my hours in the day I'm already talking about heating and cooling? Like, is that my passion? And then I thought about my background and working with a bunch of tradespeople, and I'm like, are they going to want to work for me? Like some guy who doesn't know HVAC? Like, I just kind of thought it just kind of started becoming clear that those weren't the right businesses for me. I'm not going to be able to jump into an HVAC or a plumbing business and know how to deal with the day-to-day challenges. I'm just not. And that leaves me incredibly vulnerable. And that actually becomes a very large risk. Keeping people staffed, communicating, finding, tradespeople that wanted to work for some marketing dude. Do you know what I mean? Um, and that kind of started to shift me into what do I actually enjoy doing? If I'm going to be talking about this all day, if I'm going to be doing this all day, I'm going to live it and breathe it because I really think that's the deal, right? Like you jump in and you acquire a business, you got so much invested, like it's not passive. Maybe one day, but like you're in it, you're building it. You know what I mean? You're building that airplane at 30,000 feet, as the saying goes. And I thought, I started coming around to agencies because I understand them. I understand the clients. I understand what they're looking for. I understand the team. Can I motivate the team? Can I keep the team like, can I jump in and help the team and know what I'm talking about? Can the team, when they're in trouble or struggling, count on me? Do you know what I mean? So I started coming around to that. And then funnily enough, I started thinking about the agency business model. And if you think about it, it's actually an eternally profitable business. This is a business model that's been around for over 100 years. Companies have been hiring agencies to help them grow, do marketing, do creative work. So it is an everlasting, to me, business model, this agency service model. So that kind of came around right as a perfect storm. Like it really is about timing too. I don't know if you found this, but a real kind of like perfect storm of that process had run its course. I'd put in an LOI on a couple other agencies, kind of in midway through. I had a bit of my ducks in a row, had learned from those experiences along this journey. And then DotYeti came to me before it got to market because I'd built relationships over the year with these brokers. And I saw it and I knew right away that this one was for me, and I jumped on it. And because of the process I'd gone through, I was able to, expedite things. I knew where I'd stumbled before. I knew what kind of offer was going to look better to the sellers. And it kind of all just came together in this great moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The way I thought about it was similar, and I like, where your head came, because mine kind of came to a similar thought. At first, I was thinking like, buy something totally different so I can learn something new. And then, but what I realized was, it's yes, it's got to be something I'm interested in, because I lose attention real fast if I'm not interested in something. But B, where do I have the most successful entrepreneurs find a way to build unfair advantages around their businesses? Sometimes it's like through, like, you look at like a Rockefeller type is like this monopolistic kind of like sketchy stuff, but at the time was legal apparently. Like there's some problem areas, but that's one way to build out your unique advantage that can't be replicated. And then there's people today, especially in agencies, where you have maybe especially good access to like certain clients that are really hard to reach, or you have really good access to talent that other people can't, or you have skills you built up around marketing or sales or whatever that other people don't have. So anyway, the point is thinking about where my strengths lie and where the business needed things. It made sense strengths wise to lean into something I already had an unfair advantage at. And kind of like you're talking here, it's like could I run a plumbing company? I guess, but Lord knows I'd have a huge learning curve for the first couple of years as I figure out how to just talk to plumbers. Like how many times do I interact with them? It's a whole new thing. So it's not that you can't go completely out of your comfort zone, but you have to like be ready to, do you want to push the boulder uphill at a really steep angle, or do you want to have kind of a nice, slight, healthy incline? And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. You found DotYeti off market or before it went to market. What was the process like? And most people listening probably have not gone through this process on either the buy or sell side. So walk me through just a high level. What were the key parts of that process to get it closed?
Key parts of that process. It was not a straight lined process. The first one is, the broker. I was in touch with a broker. I'd put in a LOI, letter of intent, which is the kind of first step. It gets you kind of exclusive due diligence for a set amount of time, where the seller says, this looks good, we'd be willing to sell to you under these terms. We'll give you 60 days, 30 days, 90 days to take a look under the hood, sign all the right paperwork, and really kind of dig in to see if you want to push things forward. So I put in an LOI on another actually flat rate graphic design business that they ended up not taking my LOI, took another LOI. And I was like, okay. And I didn't love that business, but I kind of kept coming back to it through my process. I wonder what happened with that. And I just happened to kind of reach out to the broker, said, hey, what happened with that? And he said, we're still working on that deal, but I have another one. And that's when it kind of came. He's like, I'm putting it up. It hasn't even gone up yet, but this might be the one. Take a look. So first you sign an NDA, which basically says, I'm not going to, use this information to harm you or sell this information, and I'll guard it, I'll destroy it when you're done. And they send you basically the high level financials, a little bit of a packet about the sellers, how they're kind of doing things top line, what the growth has looked like, numbers, revenue, kind of profits, all that kind of stuff. Once you take a look at that, and I was very interested right away. I let the broker know, and I said, I'm going to put together an LOI. So I had already a team of lawyers. Because of the way that I was structuring the acquisition, I had accounting people and all sorts of stuff. I also had one of the things that I did with my acquisition. I don't know. You went about it a little differently than me, but I was doing it through brokers, and I was looking continually at how to de-risk. How do I de-risk this incredibly risky uh
Right. This the biggest
kind
purchase
of
you've ever made in
insane
your
thing
life.
that
Yeah. How
that's
do I
right. This
de-risk
kind of
that?
like
Yeah.
insane thing that I'm gonna do. How do I de-risk it as much as possible? So
Unlike a house where, most people, the biggest purchase they make is a house. And honestly, you and me, we purchased businesses about the size of a house for a lot of people. These are not massive. So it's a similar size purchase. The difference is the kind of debt you get with these kind of businesses is not secured against really anything, because these are almost asset zero businesses where it's like the only asset is goodwill, client list, stuff very intangible. And so, unlike a house where if you screw up, you miss your house payments, the bank eventually says, okay, we're going to take your house, but you guys go rent somewhere else. You're not welcome here. That's a problem, but it also, like, it has a secured asset that is kind of the backstop. Whereas when you are going to buy a business like we did, there's no secured backstop. It's just they can keep coming after us personally as long as they want, basically, until they've got everything they feel they need. So it is a scary purchase, and it is worth de-risking. So I think you're wise to de-risk. Give us a little bit of like, what were you like? How did you go about assessing that deal and de-risking it during that diligence process then?
yeah, great. So de-risking for me was a reputable broker. I really wanted a business to come, because part of the other thing too, going through your first acquisition, you're like, is this all a big scam? You've got somebody saying like they've got this business, but like you said, it doesn't, like, where does it exist other than kind of like in this, on somebody's server? You're like, does this even exist? It's not like you can walk into the coffee shop and be like, oh, there's some tables and chairs here I'm gonna buy, like, this looks great. You're like, does this even exist? Like, you're asking me to send you all this money. What am I actually getting? So a reputable broker was one, because I knew obviously they're going to be selling more. Brokers have their own, they're salesmen, they're trying to make money, but they're not going to scam you. So a reputable
Who did you
business.
work with? Would you plug them? Would you say they're
I
good? Like,
worked with FE. I really liked them.
okay, FE International.
I,
Yeah.
I had a good experience with them. Um, they really helped kind of the process. We're very, very patient and
They sell a
getting
ton
this
of
process.
businesses, so they see a lot of stuff, and in our size range, that smaller size is typical
Totally.
for
FE
them. So
International. They've got like, they kind of have a broad range of businesses. And mostly, digital, SaaS, digital service, those kinds of things. They focus more on online businesses. So reputable broker, because I knew, look, they're gonna not risk their bigger reputation selling some lemon. They're gonna be pretty vetted. And by all the research I did on FE, they have a really high success rate in closing businesses, because they only rep, really kind of well put together and well processed businesses. So I know the back end is going to be pretty reputable. Then I also, because it was a digital business, I struggled to get kind of bank financing. And I should also be clear that I'm in Canada. So while DotYeti is a US based company, the financing was different. I didn't have access to, is it
yeah, SBA loans in the US.
SBA
Yeah,
loans? I didn't have access to that. So I
right.
was looking at but long story short, the second gut check for me was, is this business financeable by a third party? So is there another, person who's come in, or business has come in and said, I'm willing to lend somebody money to buy this? And I ended up going with Bupos, which again had a great experience. I wouldn't be where I am today without them. You're paying a super high interest rate, super high, but they don't take any lien on it. So they basically take on risk with you. So those were two kind of really important things where I was like, if everything goes completely south, that money is not against anything, and like they're in it with me. So they've also vetted the business. So I knew the business was vetted by two kind of reputable companies. Then I had a team. I had lawyers on the Canadian side, on the US side, that kind of were with me through this process, that I was gut checking against. Then when I got under LOI, um, I hired another company to come in and do the due diligence for me, because I hadn't run a business of that size before. So I didn't know what to look for necessarily in terms of P&Ls, operations. I wanted to know what I didn't know. So over invested in my team, over invested in kind of diligence, and then looked for that kind of those markers to make sure that I didn't, completely screw things up.
I'll just pause you right there, Derek, and say that, like, I don't know that you can overinvest in those areas, given how, again, high risk of purchase this is. And I mean, you can, I guess, if you spent $500,000 buying $1 million business, that was a bad ROI. But like at some point, like like you're saying, you don't have a way to guarantee this thing will for sure keep going and work. But you want as many people involved looking at it and seeing any red flags or spotting any weaknesses you can. And especially if you haven't looked at the in-depth P&Ls of a business of that size or nature before, like, you really want to have somebody who's seen 100 of these things come to you and say, yeah, it looks solid, or it looks like a little shaky here and there, or these are the trade-offs, that you're getting. And all those things are good to know because, yeah, I'll just also throw this in here. Like, when you buy a new business or buy an existing business, you don't want to go in there and assume how to fix this thing on day one. You probably don't. Like, you want to go in there and have some time to figure out, okay, it's working. I want to just sit here and kind of passively let it hum for a bit and then really start to roll my sleeves up. So the problem is, if you buy something that's really on a downward spiral, you're going to have to get up there and immediately start making changes to fix it. Buying a fixer-upper, super hard, especially if it's a space you're not familiar with. Buying something that's relatively solid and you have assurances feels relatively solid, good. You have time to figure it out before you then go change things. And so I think that's a really important thing. And if you're going to buy a business, I mean, I would highly caution against buying something for the first time that is a lemon or a danger, of at-risk business, because it's so, unless you get, I don't know, some crazy deal on it, like, it just feels like so much harder to do.
As your first business, I don't know. I mean, everybody's
I can't
up for their
imagine
own
doing that.
adventure.
Yeah,
Choose
yeah.
your own adventure. I wouldn't do that.
Exactly.
I would say one of the interesting things I think with DotYeti is, so we signed the LOI. We started to get into due diligence. I hired these companies. Again, have a great relationship with the founders. In fact, I'm still paying them. But great, a couple of great guys. That was another thing. So let's back up a sec. So met the founders. That was really important to me. That I would have a good kind of vibe and connection with them, because the business they built is going to have a bit of their essence built into it. And when I met the founders, we clicked right away. There was two of them. You could tell they were great. They were good guys. They cared about the team that they had built. They cared about the company they had built. They had built, service-based businesses are human-powered businesses, which we can get into as well too. It's a very unique business model with its own strengths and weaknesses, I would say, opportunities and challenges. But they were really invested in having a great company culture, taking care of the team. And that's really important to me as well too. So meeting with those founders, knowing that I had a good vibe with them, I'm going to be going through, connected to these guys for a long time. I wanted a great relationship, so I know the handover would be smooth. So I know that they would be available. They were great. They kind of, fast forward a bit, but they helped me on board. They were available, help me answer questions. So I wanted to make sure that relationship was really good. So met with the founders before we got the LOI in, to make sure that we had good chemistry there, and that there was a good fit. And for me, that was really important. Some people, I think, are just like looking at the business, looking at the nuts and bolts. This is transactional. Boom, I'm going to take it and go. For me, especially my first acquisition, was looking for that chemistry there, and making sure that we kind of were synced up on things, because you're going to be dealing with these people for a long time.
Exactly. And I can't imagine going into buying a business from somebody I didn't trust. And the trust needs to be mutual, because even if you take aside the culture aspect, which I think is important, but like, let's just kick that over and say, maybe you don't care about that. You're going to rebuild the culture anyway. Maybe you don't care about like the way this founder operates. You're going to completely redo it. Even so, if you go into this huge transaction where there's potential for regret and sort of issues on both sides, you don't want to go into it with a partner who is mistrusting you or you don't trust on day zero. Like, sure, you might get to that point and that sucks, but like the chances for like a lawsuit or something that kills the whole like potential of your deal. I mean, I've had a number of conversations with entrepreneurs who have sold their business and then the buyer was, very underhanded in what they did, and they end up, not paying the seller all their money or whatever. There's lots of things that can happen. And to go to court for a small business acquisition, it essentially just takes everybody's what you made to zero, because lawyers eat it all, court fees eat it all, time that you spend and mental energy you spend is just incredibly high. So you want to avoid that at all costs in buying a small business. And going into this with a partner, treating the seller as a partner in this process and making sure they feel like they're heard, that they are part of this, that you care about their where they're coming from, and you each have mutual trust. Huge. And I can't stress that enough, because I think you're right. Like, the naive view is just, oh yeah, it's just a transaction. We just buy it and then we move on. Like, never going to happen that way.
There's like 10,000 exit routes to like off the rails. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many opportunities for things to go off the rails, and you really need for me, it was very helpful to have two guys that we were collaboratively through this negotiation, because you basically, at that point, we entered into a 6-month negotiation, and there's opportunities for them to be like, we're done here. There's opportunities for me to be like, I'm done with this. So to have that strong foundation of someone you trust and have some chemistry, so that we can be like, okay, look, I'm seeing this, you're seeing this, we still both want to get this forward. How can we do that collaboratively? Helped me acquire the business. If it was different founders, I'm not sure I would have ended up with the business. Yeah.
So you eventually go through diligence. You feel good enough about it. You are working with financing, so you've got that lined up. Tell me what day one was like when you signed the final closing paperwork. I remember this feeling in the case of the business we bought. Like, you signed the final paperwork. The money, exits your account, goes to escrow or whatever, or goes to escrow to their account. I don't remember exactly what was happening, but like, big money transfer happens. And then you're like, I own this business. Like, what was that feeling like for you? And what did you do first?
Like, the thing that kept coming into my head through this whole process was like, I was approaching a cliff. It felt like I was like on this like jog or run or bicycle or something, going up to this cliff, and you're continually seeing this cliff coming, and you're like, okay, I'm either gonna fall right off, or I'm gonna jump, or I don't have to jump. So you're doing this thing, and
yeah, you can stop anytime until you get to the edge.
But it's like getting closer and closer and closer to the point where you're like, I'm going to give these people a lot of money, and they're gonna basically give me some access codes or whatever, some passwords, and I'm going to have to figure it out. So going through that process was the final kind of moment. It was exciting, terrifying. It was a big kind of it was kind of like a free fall. That's kind of what it felt like. I felt like I was standing on the edge of the cliff, and at a certain point I was like, I'm going, and I just jumped. And there's that saying, I don't know exactly how it goes, but burn the boats, right? If you're going out to war, you got to go and you got to burn the boats. And that's what it was like. It was like, I had to just be like, I'm jumping. And so it was exciting. It was thrilling. It was terrifying. It was like, I did it, because a lot of people along the way are like, a lot of people look in this, they never kind of actually do it. So I was excited that I did it, and I felt proud of myself and was excited. And I'd done so much work to get to that point. I felt good about what I was getting into. But then it's terrifying. We had to do, the founders, we've got a pretty big team. I think, the team was about, at the time, I think it was about 40 people, they had really close relationships with. They had to introduce me. I had to like get up and do this virtual meeting where they're like, by the way, the vision we sold you is not happening, and here's this guy. And you're like,
Yep.
hey,
Yep.
everyone,
Yep. Yep.
I'm
I
here
remember
now.
that feeling too. It's like, I know you've been working with me for many years, but I just sold the company and here's Karl. Because, to give listeners context, very rarely in a business acquisition does the seller tell employees that they're going to sell this business until it happens, because there's a lot of reasons. I mean, it can cause like employees to maybe say, ooh, I want to get out of this, or get scared. It can kind of distract people from their core jobs, which is not good for anybody. And also the deal might not go through. And so they kind of want to wait until it's really, really inked and done to like go spend the mental energy telling everyone and then transitioning them. And so it is kind of jarring. And we had one, I think, key employee who knew, but pretty much everybody else was in the dark on it. And it can be jarring, but at the same time, there's not really an easy way to do it. But anyway, it's awkward. Yes.
Having to do it all remotely, I think, presented its own challenges. That I think if there was the biggest challenge that we faced, it was, even though we had a great culture, I like to think that I invested a lot in throughout my career in becoming a good leader, but when you're all of a sudden in that seat and you've got, at the time, 40 people looking up at you, and you get into the business and you realize we actually have to make some changes here. Like the fundamentals are good, but like there's some stuff that's not working. And that's challenging to do, to make those kind of changes, because the culture is going to shift, because I am a different person and I do have different views, and I do think that we need to do certain things to get to the next level. And I had a lot of people, who were like, I don't want to go on this route with you. And that is hard. And when people don't buy into your vision, and sometimes they leave on, unpleasant terms, or very unhappy that this thing that they did, that they enjoyed with their friends, is now changing and not there anymore, and they feel powerless. And that was a much longer journey than I think I was anticipating. And I think we're kind of through it now, but there was a lot of changes that had to be made. They were not all easy. And kind of jumping in and being that guy too was a whole new experience. I'd never been, a CEO is a bit of a funny, still a bit of a funny, chose like my title, but it's still a funny like term for me. And like being the guy who's there now and makes all the decisions and has to set the vision and has to get buy-in. That's been an adventure, and a great adventure. But that's the first meeting, like you said, like being remote and kind of figuring out was definitely challenging.
It's funny you say this, Derek, about that shock of, oh, I'm the one in charge. I remember this, and I don't know I don't know why I didn't think this would be so jarring, or why I didn't realize this would be so jarring. So like when I started draft.dev, it was kind of it grew quickly, and I had a similar feeling where I'm like, oh shit, I'm the only one who can make decisions. I am in charge of every direction we take until I delegate it off to somebody, and it was exhausting. I did not really think about how hard mentally that is. And I know if you're not an entrepreneur and you're listening to this, you're thinking, oh, that sounds awesome, I get to decide everything. And it's like, yes, but your brain like fatigues from making those decisions, because it's not just the big fun decisions you get to make. You're also making these minute, like just tiny little day-to-day things that like, and you had a team, so maybe you weren't making 100% of them, but it's a big difference going from, I'm an employee, this is my area and domain, but ultimately I get to kick some decisions up to my boss, when they're big enough, to I'm in charge of literally everything, and anybody has anything, it bubbles up to me, and I'm the backstop on every issue. Like it's exhausting. And so I think it is something worth appreciating, and it's a shift in mindset for sure.
It's a shift. I have a much better appreciation for all the CEOs that I was like, what's their problem? Why can't they just, because the thing is you make these decisions and, you either make, you have to find the right balance of timing. Like, are you making decisions too quickly? Are you making them too slowly? And finding that middle ground does take uh, some learnings, and I think I'm still working on that. It's like sometimes if you make decisions, I like to make decisions quick, but I realize that that can feel whiplashy for employees when you're like you're reacting as a CEO to like all the information you're taking in. How's the business performing? What are the outside factors? What else is going on in the market? Like what's happening, and you're making decisions to adjust and to that in real time. And then you might find out in, staying within your strategy. If you set your strategy first, but there's still a million decisions you can make within that strategy. And if you're making them too quick, it can feel like whiplash for the people below you. They can think, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And you have to continually reaffirm. So finding that pace of decision making um, is important. Finding the pace of responding to things, I think, is important in a world where you can slack at any hours of the day. And making sure that the strategy that I have set is consistent and coming back to that as frequently as I can. So that the decisions that get made are in that context, and I always try to be as transparent with my team as possible. But again, understanding, like, when you're in that seat with so much invested and so much riding on it, the stakes are really, really high for you. They're not as high for some of my designers, and that's okay. That's totally fine. But when I come in with real urgency or have to change things, I have to respect and be kind of aware, find that balance of like, I need to lead this business. And then B, like, understand how my decisions impact a team on a day-to-day basis. And I try to provide as much transparency as possible and just be like, this is why this is happening. This is why I'm making this decision, like, as much as I can, and contextualize it for the team so that they understand, like, hey, at least we know the direction we're going. But yeah, it was an adjustment sitting in that seat. Still is. I'm still learning every day.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely learning every day. So Derek, one other question, and we're going to start wrapping up here in a minute, but one other question that comes up as I think about this transition: what do you think is something you did well or you did change that has gone well? Like what's something that, looking back, you're like, oh, that was the right move and that was strategically the right change to make, given where the business was at? Tell me more about that.
So we're going through it right now. Um, we're going through it right now. The business model that the founders had put in place, which was this unlimited graphic design subscription, it's race to the bottom pricing, it's cheapest, fastest, um, and we had a culture and team built around that. So amazing designers in there. But the hiring strategy, um, a lot of it was aimed to that. And I think they had a plan to exit. And so they built a business that was margins look like this, everything looks like this. And it was, cost suppression. When I got into the business, you know, I do sales, right? So I do sales still. I've done sales since the day I started. So, which is awesome because I talk to clients, and I talk to the market literally every day. What's working, what's not working, what are you looking for? What are your pain points? Um, every single day. I realized that the opportunity for us is up market and higher quality. more personal touch, more of that traditional agency model, which I know, but with that flat rate, cost efficiency, that's where we wanted to go. So that change was significant because it required a lot of soul searching by myself and some of our key leadership team on, do we have the right bums in the right seats here to get us to where we want to go. Um, and you know, I value the people that work for me. I value people. I've never been a like, it's hard for me to make changes. It's hard for anybody. It's hard emotionally to make change on the team. You know, it's going to impact people, and it's harder, of course, for the people who are being impacted. But I don't make those decisions lightly, and so there's been a lot of work around that. We're pretty much out of it, but essentially bringing on more senior talent, I guess, and pivoting in that way to be able to kind of shift the business model, the service offering, I guess, fundamentally. That's been a big kind of shift that we've gone through. That was, I think, a little bit unforeseen, but it's almost, I guess, big picture. It's a bit of a shift in strategic direction within the same model. Because graphic design, as you know, is like, you know, it's hyper competitive, but it's a massive market. You got AI breathing down your throat. You got freelancers, Fiverr's, race to the bottom, agencies charging $250,000, other agencies charging $50. How do we make, you know, AI is pumping out stuff like crazy. How do we survive in this area? And so setting a clear strategic direction, and then the impacts of implementing that new strategic direction, how that impacted our culture and our people. That was a big challenge, big learning.
Yeah. It's a really good observation there. And I think this is probably one of the most important things that agency leaders have to do, is determine where in that market between super commoditized and super specialized they want to fall, and then who is the person they need to reach to sell that kind of offer to. And it shifts a lot. Like, again, to your point, if you're going to sell the lowest cost possible, it's going to drive you towards a certain kind of customer that has a certain budget and a certain need level. And then if you're going to say, we're going to offer the $250,000 branding package to large corporates, fine, but it's a totally different process and sale, and the way you market yourself, all that stuff has to change. So the mistake is trying to go after all of them because you just want everything. That's not going to work. There's a way to do maybe 2 points on that continuum, but you can't do 100 of them. And so I think it is probably one of the most important strategic decisions, especially like you say, with the very highly commoditized agencies really starting to feel the pressure from AI generated stuff. The same thing is happening in content, where if you were an agency that offered the, 100,000 words for $1,000 a month or whatever it was, like a few years ago, that's now all just AI content. There's no reason, if you're getting that bottom of the barrel stuff, there's no reason to pay a human to be involved at all. Just, generate the prompts and shoot it out. And so most of us in the content agency space have moved pretty hard up market to where we're now offering more strategic help, more post content, promotion stuff. We're just figuring out ways to get more involved in more of it. So it's not just a pure, write the content, that's it. So it's a constant, it's always moving though. And this will change in the next 5-10 years. It'll change again in 5-10 years. It's just the way it goes. It's one of those reasons I laugh about whenever somebody says passive income for any small business, but especially service businesses. Like, come on, we know it's going to change. Like, technology is going to change. People are going to change. It's nearly impossible to get completely passive, but it's good to try.
Totally. Well, you know what I always think? Yeah, I don't know about the passive income thing. I think that's like, if you want passive income, stick your money in the
put in a dividend stocks or whatever, right?
Sit back and do that. But buying a business and owning a business is not passive unless you get to Jeff Bezos level and you just peel off on a giant yacht.
But the ironic thing there's the people who build businesses like that big, that successful, they're never passive in
he
anything
wasn't
they
passive.
do, you know?
No,
Yeah.
he didn't build
Yeah.
that passively, nor to be
Right.
a
Nor
passive
was that
business.
his goal. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with service-based
yeah,
business,
go ahead.
there's one point to make there is that I felt like, people were like, aren't you worried about AI disrupting design and all that? And I'm really not. And there's two reasons, and it's probably similar to you. I think number one, there's always going to be a market for people who just want you to do it for them. It's a service-based model. There's always going to be people. Look, you can DIY anything with YouTube, but people don't want to do that.
People
Do you know
still
what I
pay
mean?
for
People
agencies. I mean, you could QuickBooks will AI categorize your accounting. I still pay a bookkeeper every month, and it's never, yeah. And again, like the AI, I want them to use the AI tools because it makes my costs go down. But like fundamentally, like I don't want to learn all the tools that come out in every category. Nobody does. So yeah.
Our clients don't have the capacity to do it all themselves, and we're a very scalable solution for them. But there's always going to be people who are just like, look, I'm really busy. I'm focused on 10 other things. Can you do this for me or help me do this? And you're like, yes. Number two, I think AI is a really powerful tool in hands of the specialist. So I think AI for design is an incredibly powerful tool for my designers. They're making AI video production. They're ideating with AI. They're bringing, they're getting more efficient with it. But a CMO or even a marketing manager, like they've got other things to do than sit around and play with prompts all day. And if they want to do that, that's fine, or they want to bring that in house. But there's always going to be I can't go to the accountant. Like I can go in and rip up a whatever it is accountants do, but like I'm a marketer. Like I don't know if that's right. Whatever GPT gives me back, you know what I mean? So GPT is a powerful marketing tool in my hands, not that. So I think there's always going to be that market for people who want it done for you. And I think AI is a really powerful tool for designers. And I also worked in, AI is evolving so fast and who knows what's going to be next. But I worked in ad tech for the last 15 years. Like the AI and machine learning there is still needs human power to run it. I think you still need to know how to prompt. You still need to know how to cut things together. You still need to know how to edit. So I don't think it's going to completely take over. I mean, Canva, of course, has kind of got that market cornered, but I really think that there's...
Yeah, but again, you got to be a DIYer. I mean, like I've played with Canva. I'm not a designer. I know nothing about design, and it still takes me a fair bit of time just to get anything that's like halfway usable in Canva. And at some point, my time is worth more per hour than paying DotYeti's monthly fee. It's actually pretty quick because the fee is not that high. But anyway, so like we're all making that. I think smart businesses are making that equation in their head all the time of like, we could hire somebody for this. We could make our CMO do it, but it's not worth the ROI in time. Derek, I have one last question. I swear this is the last one, but I like to ask everybody, and since you're a reader, I want to steal your book list. Anything you've read lately that really impacted you personally, whether it's a personal thing, business thing, whatever, any books in the last year or two? We already mentioned Buy Then Build and the Millionaire Fastlane, but anything else?
Yeah, Millionaire Fastlane and Buy Then Build were definitely transformational for me. Another amazing marketing book is called, and very kind of like under the radar, it's called How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp. That is, I think, what the biggest brands in the world all know, how they've got their business from 5 million to 100 million. That I think a lot of small businesses and medium-sized businesses don't know. They get pushed into kind of like performance marketing or whatever. But How Brands Grow, I think it's a little bit of a technical read, but one of the best marketing books there are. If you're looking at how am I going to scale my brand or my business past a certain revenue threshold, it's a phenomenal book.
Cool. Great. Fantastic recommendation. I have not read that, so that's going on my list. Derek Delost and DotYeti. We will put all your links to LinkedIn and to DotYeti in the show notes. Any other final words, Derek?
Nope. No final words. It's been great chatting with you. And yeah, if anyone wants to reach out, I'm always happy to kind of chat about my journey through business acquisition. It was a super exciting one and continues to be very rewarding and fulfilling. I love every minute of it. Definitely more sleepless nights, but such an awesome journey. And anyone who's considering it, I'm always happy to chat. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or anywhere else, and I'll be happy to chat.
Cool. Thanks, Derek. I appreciate the time and sharing. And yeah, I think this has been a great look at behind the scenes of buying a small agency and what that looks like in reality and how it can go in a it's been mostly positive for you. So that's good. I know we talk about our struggles plenty offline when we have our conversations, but the reality is, like you said, this is choosing the path of entrepreneurship. It's a path where you're going to have some sleepless nights, but you're also going to have some of them probably the most rewarding kind of work you can and a lot of upside in the long term. So it's been fun to be on the journey and talk about it with you, Derek. Thanks for being here. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Karl. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you for watching this episode of Retain Trust. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube. It takes 2 seconds and it helps others find out about the show. And if you have questions or suggestions for a future episode, leave a comment. See you next time.